Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is internationally syndicated solely due to the love and support that you all continue to give. We're available across all major distributors, and as long as you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in, because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Julia Antoinette Rosenstein. Now we're going to be discussing Julia's incredible book, Last Bohemian, The Life and Times of Jonathan David Batchelor. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's a lot of other places, man, but most importantly, check out our personal website, and that's juliarosensteinauthor.com. There, gather more information on her, on this book, hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing pages. Man, I'm telling you, you gotta head on over there to gather everything that she has in store, and that's juliarosensteinauthor.com. Once again. And I quickly want to point out the fact that Julia was brought to us by Studio of Books. So for writers out there listening in who have gone through their process, and now you're looking at me like, Benji, I need some help moving this book that I just developed. I understand that it is a masterpiece. How do I get it out there? I got news for you, man. Head on over to studioofbooks.org and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Julia here on the line. People, in an age of side hustles and optimized lifestyles, the story of Jonathan David Batchelor feels almost radical to a certain degree, okay? He was a man whose only currency was his philosophy, a choice that led him from a government paycheck to a government camp, not for what he did, but actually for what he believed. Now, this is the story of the last true bohemian and why his kind of freedom might just be extinct. And trust me when I tell you, this is so much larger than a biography. Now, on the surface level, that's what it is, but I promise when you read in between the lines, we're going to be able to find some stark contrasts between his life, the experiences that he had, and how today history might just be repeating itself. And that's all I'm going to say at the moment. Sit back and get ready. Julia, first and foremost, welcome to the network, and thank you for being a guest. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm feeling really good. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. That's very kind.
Well, Julia, it was my pleasure. And I'll just say, I'm following the roadmap that you've already established. Okay, so you're thanking me. I'm going to pass it right back to you because all I did was follow your lead. What you've comprised here is something that is going to be an education for a lot of people, myself included. When the opportunity presented itself to have you on our network, I'll be honest, I had never heard of Jonathan. As my team and I were researching in preparation for this interview, I quickly became a very big fan. This man was incredible for what he had done, the lifestyle that he had lived. And I think that, again, there is a lot of wisdom to be gained. So we're looking forward to the discussion. Let's start off right at the ground floor. Tell us a little bit more about your book, Last Bohemian.
I lived with Jonathan last century for 18 years. He died in 2003. And I just was baffled because he's a wonderful artist. He's truly a major artist. But nobody ever heard of him. And while he was alive, I did try and take his paintings to different galleries in the San Francisco Bay Area. And people looked at his work and said, oh, that's old hat. It's already done. That's true. He was an impressionist-style painter, and he loved to paint people, still lifes, and portraits. It was considered passé, and the vanguard had come through, which would be modern art. And Jonathan never cared for modern art. He dabbled in it very briefly, didn't like it, and he continued to paint in a very traditional manner. And so he was somewhat ignored by a lot of people. And while I lived with him, I kept thinking, why isn't this man better known? Why do not people know of him? I don't get it. So after he died, I pulled together his archives and presented this book, because I wanted him to be out there in the world, and I wanted people to know of him. He was incredible. He lived for philosophy. He lived not for finances. Finances were the last thing on his mind. But he was very well educated, but it was entirely self-taught, because when he was growing up, college just was not an option. And he was an incredible reader. Oh my God, his book was full of hundreds and thousands of books. Just every single room packed, jammed with shelves and books everywhere. It was an amazing experience for me, because I am also quite a reader. So living there was fun. I got to read and read. So I wanted to bring Jonathan's face to the world. And actually that's why the cover of the book has the last self-portrait he ever painted. It's called Self-Portrait in a Brown Hat. And he's wearing that Greek fisherman's cap that he always wore. And it's just, I'm hoping that for people who love art will look at that cover and they'll just be taken in by it, as many people were while he was alive. Everybody loved that portrait.
Listen, I can see why. Julia, it is captivating to see. And listen, as an artist myself, I believe that there's just a respect amongst it, even though my background isn't in painting or again, I'm a filmmaker by trade. So it's a completely different medium, although there is a general respect amongst artists. And I can look at it, and even though it's not something that I can do myself, there is an admiration that I have, and I know a lot of people will as well. My follow-up now that I want to go into is, I'm curious to know, I think when you spend so many years researching and being invested, and even in your case, it wasn't just about the research. You actually knew the man. You lived with him. So I'm curious to know, from a writing perspective, upon conclusion of all of this, how did you find the balance, right? Where did you, as the author, ultimately land on the spectrum between admiration and critique? And I don't even know. I don't know if there was any critique that you have in the book, but talk to us a little bit more about that, about not having the love that you possessed for him is apparent. But of course, when you're writing the book, you can't have it be all about the admiration. You do, to a certain degree, have to separate yourself. So I guess talk to us a little bit more about finding that balance.
That's a very interesting question, and it's actually something I have thought of on occasion. I want to briefly say that I am on the autism spectrum, and when I was a young woman, I was basically lost to the world, and that's a good way to describe me, because I was blind to people, and I just couldn't navigate the world, and it was very frustrating for me.
Wow.
And when I lived with Jonathan, I saw him making very similar mistakes, only he was raised in an era when nobody ever gave a thought of autism. So on the surface level, he appeared to be very quirky, and he made the many social faux pas, as I have too. And it was easy for me to be critical. I never spoke to him about it or said anything, but I have to say that I think that because I have some of the same features, that I was more understanding, because on a surface level, Jonathan might have appeared to be very boorish to some people, but I can also understand why he was the way he was and why he did the things that he did. And I suppose the worst of the worst is that anybody who read about him or reads about him would see him as a womanizer. And the truth of the matter is that he was, but he also was not, because he was interested in women, but he was not dishonest. He was upfront with every woman he ever met, and he was interested in every woman for her own persona, for her own self, for what she could give to the world, for her personality. And if a woman wanted nothing to do with him, he was okay with that. He never pursued. He was never a wolfish type of a man. He always backed off, and he listened. That was the main thing. He listened. And he had quite a following of women. Even while he was married, women followed him. So on the surface level, I could see where someone would say, oh, he's just a womanizer, but I'm saying, hey, wait a second, we need to take these other things into consideration, because he wasn't intentionally trying to hurt any human being. He was very soft inside that way. So when you say criticism, that's what came to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he meant criticizing his art, which I don't feel like I'm a good enough artist to do that, but
No, Julia, you answered it perfectly, and it's really more so of everything, of him, the individual, not so much the art. Thank you very much for that. People, again, remember, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's Julia Rosenstein, author.com. Head on over there, purchase your copies of Last Bohemian today. This is one you definitely want to add to your shelf. Julia, listen, as I mentioned in my opening, and I want to go here again, and first and foremost, I want to preface it by saying to our listening audience, this is not Julia's perspective, okay? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that she disagrees with this perspective, but this is definitely something that I am imposing. And I talked to her briefly about this on the pre-screening call, when I look at this book and I analyze Jonathan's life, and people, trust me when I tell you, his artistry was magnificent, but this book, it covers a lot. It is nuanced. And one aspect of it that we haven't really touched up on yet is how Jonathan, given his opposing views of the government during his time and of a particular war that was being conducted, Jonathan was placed in a camp because his words were deemed to be opposing and almost detrimental to a certain degree. So I look at what happened to him, and then I can't help but stop and analyze that there is an eerie similarity to what is currently happening within our world today and within this current administration. It is by no means solely limited to this current administration, but it is happening right now under this leadership. So let's call a spade a spade. Listen, Jonathan's platform was the shipyard, right? Today, it's social media, it's television, it's a lot. But the principle, however, again, it feels similar. An individual uses their available platform to spread views that challenge the dominant narrative and face significant professional and even personal consequences. Again, we know about what happened to Jonathan. We see countless examples happening within today's society. The most recent one, or I guess the most notable one that has happened in recent times, was the slight cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel. There was a huge outpouring of support. They ended up reinstating his show, but we saw what happened where it was a censorship to a certain degree. I think that there is a surprising connection that can be established. Julia, I pass it back to you. Your perspective on that, is there a correlation that you can see, and what is the cost of freedom of speech?
Well, yes, that's such an interesting question. Jonathan did work in the San Francisco Bay Area shipyards during World War II, but he was also very outspoken, and he was not afraid to rant against war. He hated war. In fact, he's hated war all of his life. Even when he was a child, he made drawings of cartoonish figures of what he depicted to be what war would look like, which are big hulking creatures. So he was very vocal. He loved to talk, and he would talk against the war. So here they were building ships for World War II, and here he was ranting against war. And I think what happened is that some people may have mistaken his rants as being against World War II, but whatever it was, somebody reported him to the federal government, and the government wasn't sure what to do because they knew he was harmless. He wasn't harming people, but they also thought he might have been demoralizing the workforce. So they decided to send him to a conscientious objectors camp up in Oregon, which was a good thing and a negative thing. He loved the beauty of Oregon, but also he felt like he was in prison.
Yeah.
And he had hearing problems, so he couldn't socialize with the camp people very well. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And the connection with Jimmy Kimmel is just astounding. I hadn't even made the connection. You're the one who made it, and I'm sitting here and it's blowing my mind. But that's correct.
Listen, I as an artist myself, as I told you, Julia, and as I've told my listening audience a number of times, as an artist myself, I try to look at every piece of art that I create as, okay, is there a connection? Is there a through line? Could this potentially be a mirror of sorts? I guess I'm just always operating from that perspective anyway, and it was just something that was so apparent to me when we were doing research, and I thought it was a very interesting note. And again, I didn't want to make the entire interview about it because it's not, right? The interview is about this amazing gentleman, Jonathan David Batchelor, the life that he sustained, and the constant reminder, like, at least for me, is that, listen, Jonathan's life was a work of art in itself, right? Like, it wasn't just the paintings that he established. The way this man lived is something that seems so foreign to a lot of us now in the current day and age that we are in, but it reminds us to challenge that little voice in all of us, right? That wonders what would happen if we prioritized passion over profit just a little bit more. And I get it. The world that we live in, listen, people, you need money to survive. As unfortunate as it is, you can't live without money. So you do need to have it to a certain degree. And I get that. But there are so many other things that, in my opinion, matter so much more. And this book is a constant reminder. I'm going to say it again. It's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Julia Rosenstein, author.com. Pick up copies of this magnificent book today and be on the lookout, man, because I hope that there are a lot more on the horizon. But this, and I didn't mention it before, but this is just part one. There's also a part two as well, and you're going to want to check them both out so you know where to go. Julia, this has been an absolute honor. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you. It has been an honor. And you brought all these wonderful points. I'm so impressed. Thank you.